Welcome to Two Hypnotherapists Talking with me, Denise Billen-Mejia, in Delaware, USA.
And me, Martin Furber, in Preston, UK.
This weekly podcast is for anyone and everyone who'd like to know more about the fascinating subject of hypnosis and the benefits it offers.
I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist.
I'm a retired medical doctor turned consulting hypnotist.
We are Two Hypnotherapists Talking.
So let's get on with the episode.
Yep, let's get on with the show indeed. Denise, introduce our guest, please.
Hi, this is Sharon, and I can't pronounce your last name because I'm horrible with last names. Sharon is also British, she's from London, but also lives in the US most of the time. But currently we're recording from, are you in London now?
I'm in London. This is my office. Yay. This is my London office. I hope you can't see the mess. I've got a lot of baggage around me, lots of suitcases.
And Sharon and I met very briefly at the Elman conference at the beginning of the year and have a load of things in common. And she very kindly agreed to come and talk. And now she knows Martin too. So Sharon, first pronounce your last name because it is a bit of a mystery.
It's exactly as it's spelled. It sounds as the way it's spelled. So it's Waxkirsh. That's it.
Waxkirsh. Do you know what's the origin? I haven't come across the name before.
It's potentially German, I think, Wax and Kirsch, but somebody recently from a heritage something just wrote to me and said, we found somebody we believe is your closest ancestors, because we don't have any. There's only another set of Waxkirshes in the world, and they're in Jamaica.
Okay.
And so they're Jamaican background. They're from my father's side, some cousin married into Jamaican families, and that's the other Waxkirsh. So that's it. If you see another Waxkirsh, they're my family.
Okay, I'll say hi from you if I do.
Yeah, and if they don't know me, that means they've disowned me, and that's very sad.
So Sharon, tell us a little bit about your background, since neither of us actually know you terribly well, and probably very few people listening to this know you at all. How did you manage? Why did you come to America, and do you live here often, and how did you find hypnosis?
I always say I reside in Indiana and I live in London.
Oh, that's fun. How many months of the year are you in each place?
I would say more in the US, but actually we travel a lot. My husband's a professor at university there, so it means that we can sort of every break of the semester we're out, and so whether we're out of the US or out of our state is variable. This month I've just come back from Italy and I'm off to Copenhagen next week, and then I'll be in New York, and then I'll be back in Indiana.
Okay, so Sharon, tell us, how did you find hypnosis?
How did I get into this? It's a funny thing. I was actually an animator originally. That's what I trained in. So I'm really good with art and the subconscious mind in that respect. Mm-hmm. So when I get artists that come to see me, we've got a lot in common. I actually have worked with a lot of filmmakers as well. It's uncanny where your past is and what you're presented with as a clinician. But I was actually looking for a new career. I just wanted to do something else, and I sort of wrote, I guess what we would all know now as automatic writing, and I just kind of scribbled a list of all the things I wanted to do in life, and that included being a chef in space, being a potter. I couldn't cook, by the way, but never mind. I wanted to do all these great things, maybe 3D animation, which I knew was now computerized, and that wasn't so exciting for me. And then I just wrote, hypnotherapist on this list, and I just continued with my list, and I thought, hang on a minute. So I thought, well, had I been watching too much Darren Brown? I mean, it was when he was first on the scene as well. I mean, this is going on 20 years ago. And I thought, well, why this? And I was really interested in self-development anyway. And one of the things that I was very aware of when I used to do workshops of, self-development workshops of any kind, I would go on them for a week and come out sort of elated, feeling like, oh yes, I've found myself. And then, about 2 days afterwards of that week, 8 days in, 9 days in, it's like, okay, what happened? What did I spend the money on? What actually was not working there? What didn't happen? And so when I saw about, on my list, hypnotherapist, I thought, hang on a minute, does this have something to do with that part of my life? So I went on a very brief, let's say, web crawl, because at the time there wasn't that much out there, but loads of spinning websites. It was great, and I was like, oh, am I being hypnotized? I have no clue, and I kept thinking, well, who trained the trainers? So I looked at this. For me, what was my pyramid, and I came across a gentleman called Gil Boyne, and I decided to phone him up. He was in America, so I phoned up, and he said, yeah, elderly gentleman in his 80s, and he said, well, dear, I'm 80 something years old, and why don't you work with one of my students who knows my work better than I do? He's my protege. And I said, well, who's he? And he said, he's in London. So he guided me to Dr. John Butler. So some of the viewers may know John. And I was pretty much one of his first students. Well, there was about 6 of us on his training, I'd say, very small. And so it was pretty much like having one-to-one tuition. Well, it was one-to-one tuition. It was, there was, as many of you know, when you work in the industry and you're alongside lots of other students in these training groups, there's a very small percentage that actually do go out into the big wide world and choose to do this as not only as a career at some point, but a full-time career. And so I would say none of the students were that interested to take it as part of their career.
So you think their intention was just, this is an interesting thing to learn? It wasn't they were necessarily looking for a job?
Absolutely. I mean, there were definitely people on that. As I say, there was about 6 of us.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people listening who have learned a bit of hypnosis but aren't doing it full time, that's okay.
It's okay, yeah.
It's fine. We're happy with everybody learning hypnosis and not being full time. But if you're going to do it as a job, at least know what you're doing. Really have training first.
Really have training. But and it is true that the people that I studied with, they were fantastic. We all made a lot of effort, but in terms of them going on, there were already people who were in careers. That's the thing. They were in careers. So there was a nurse. So she was in a career. So it was totally appropriate for her to be doing this. There were other people doing various other things. So there was an osteopath, and again, and a acupuncturist. So again, these were careers that they used hypnosis as part and parcel of that profession, which made sense.
Right.
But to go into it as a full-time person, that's something else, I guess. Who had no other career other than animation, which didn't really like it.
But you did, when you finished the course, you then hung a shingle and started working full-time?
I went straight to full-time. I decided, for me, it was a question of, I've spent my money on a training and I'm going to just use it. That was it. It was, there was no question. I want to make my money back, which I have done. I can't even say
many times over.
I mean, it's been a lifetime. This is already a 20-year career. So I ended up, just doing hypnotherapy. And I think because I was with John Butler, he was a specialist as well in the medical arena. He was at the time doing something called Hypnosurgery 5 Live, which was a live filmed event on Channel 5 in Britain. At the time, of a hernia operation, no anesthetic. And if you manage to watch that, you can see it on YouTube with a guy called Dale, who wouldn't quit smoking, just so you know. He would do this, but he didn't want to quit smoking. He would come into our course and John would be teaching us, but of course he would be getting influenced by what we were learning and stuff like that. So it was great for him. And John was doing, it interested me, this kind of surgical element. And then not long after I finished, I had a friend who was a surgeon, and he'd invited me to one of these parties, surgeon parties, and he said to me, oh, don't tell anybody what you do. And I said, why is that? And he says, well, you just don't say, it's not the sort of thing you talk about. And I said, well, you know what, I'm really proud of what I've just learned. If somebody asks me, I will. interesting enough, people did at this party. They said, Sharon, what do you do? And I said, I'm a hypnotherapist. And they would say, oh, did you see that Hypnosurgery 5 Live? And I said, yes, I did. As it happens, that was my tutor. And they said to me, can you teach me? So I thought, I've been out of this 5 minutes. And so I contacted John and I said, look, this would be completely unethical and there's no way I could teach this. I had no background in it. I said, could you teach these people? I've got a group of surgeons that are very interested. And he said, well, you know what, Sharon, I've found it very difficult to connect to that world at this point. He said, and you seem to have just walked into it. And he said, well, why don't we set up together? And we created something called the Institute of Hypnotherapy for Medical and Dental Practice, the IHMDP, where we would teach surgeons, anaesthetists, dentists, and the medical field in that realm. And of course, I was getting better and better trained by being alongside John all the time. And I was just getting more and more influenced and trained. I mean, it was really intensive training. And we would go around and give workshops and lectures. And I'll never forget, I was at the British Dental Trade Association. And we were meant to be doing a live presentation of two clients. One patient that was wanted to do something with no anesthetic, and the other one which was a phobic who wanted to do a surgery no anesthetic. So I'm waiting for John and I'm on the phone that morning. I'm just, John, are you coming? I'm stuck in traffic. You just go ahead. And I'm like, well, I've got to go ahead. It's our time. So I do the work. I'm hypnotizing this patient and at the same time talking to the audience, and I'm doing everything at the same time. It was quite nerve-wracking, sweating buckets. Anyway, that goes really well. And so comes to lunch and I'm, John, where are you? Are you? And he says, you did the first one okay. I said, yeah, but are you coming? He goes, well, I'm still stuck in traffic. No, the guy's down the road. And so I end up doing the next one. And I have to say, what a brilliant mentor, because it was after that he said, well, you've done it now. He said, and in fact, I had actually been doing a lot of dental work prior to this. It wasn't just this was the only one, but he said, take the dentist. He said, why don't you just take all the dentists and deal with them? And so when we did trainings, I would just do trainings for dentists. And that's how I became much more well known in the dental arena. But of course, the medics were still interested. And I was really interested in the medical field, but it is definitely a different kettle of fish. I mean, as you know, it's, there's different dynamics to these industries, although they need the same processes and understanding.
But they're also, it's a definite niche. I mean, there is just this part of the anatomy you're dealing with. You need to know about the rest of it, but you're only dealing with the math, whereas a physician could be a lot of different things.
A lot of different things, yeah.
So do you work with medical issues, or do you, because I know we talked about a knee replacement a little while ago, right?
Yeah, so hopefully I'm still waiting for an orthopedic surgeon to agree to doing a knee replacement no anesthetic. But yeah, I've been in all sorts of surgery. I mean, one of my most challenging ones, I would say, was a vasectomy. And it was challenging because my client hadn't told the surgeon that he wanted me.
Well, that's a challenge.
It was a real challenge.
Yeah.
The surgeon.
Who is this person?
Right. And this is a real thing. So I've learned a lot about how to manage all these situations now. But the surgeon wanted me outside the door. And so I had to sit outside the door.
Just relax. Yeah, okay.
Pretty much. And then the surgeon would constantly call me in, and I'm not in scrubs, and I'm having to walk past my client's nether regions, on full display, which was not. I don't have an issue with it, but it's not most comfortable for him as well. And so I had to walk past this and then do some work, and then I'd be told to get out now, sit down outside the surgery, wait a minute till the surgeon, could you come back in again, please? And it went on like this. And I said,
how long did that start? I mean, vasectomies are not usually very long. They must have prolonged it tremendously.
It did. I mean, and that's the most stupid thing. I mean, on the other side of things, I just did a 80 3-year-old tooth removal, no anesthetic, and it took, I would say, under 15 seconds from beginning to end. That's including induction and anaesthetism and tooth removal. So it's, it can be done. If you've got somebody on board.
But lest anybody who is truly new to hypnosis is watching. This is not somebody you walked into the doctor's office and said, "Oh, I can take care of that." Boom, this thing. You had prepped this person. You'd worked with the client. You had not.
No. And I'm going to tell you, Denise.
I'm going to have to manage some expectations. This is an unusual situation.
I'm going to. I don't want to come to people to get wrong idea about this, because they're really, in general, I do prep people, and that goes without saying. There are times where I am in some of I would say, the most challenging situations and challenged, and I enjoy that part of my work. I enjoy a challenge. I enjoy an experiment. It's not for everybody. I think one of the things about doing any kind of surgical, medical, or dental is you have got to go with the flow. You have got to be open to the whole point of deal with what emerges. You've got to go with that ethos. Otherwise, you're in trouble, because there's so many different dynamics that are going on. And with this particular person, it was like, that's what I'm having. And I'm like, oh, sure, let's do it. Come on. And the dentist were like, well, I don't have time for this. And I said, well, how long do you need? And she said, well, I've got patience. I said, I'll get it done in a couple of seconds. And so the client was already like, oh, it's a couple of seconds. No, all right, boom. So again,
the real power of suggestion there.
Real power, exactly. Yeah. And I always say, it's the power of motivation. It's not always understood how this works. And so people are often scared because they don't understand how it works. Therefore, they spend ages doing something, thinking the length of time is going to create a different outcome. And that's not always the case. But I do think if you understand the subconscious, that's the key. And again, I've been doing this 20 years. That there's a big difference for just walking into. I have made so many mistakes, and I have done so many things that I'd like to have done a different way. So yeah, you have to keep learning on the job.
Yeah. What is your current passion? That's rhetorical, because I sort of know the answer, but what is your current passion right now? What do you want to, or do you want to talk about that yet?
Oh, I've got things going on, as you know, Denise. One of the things that I'm creating is a global organization for medical and dental practitioners to be able to work alongside hypnotherapists, so that we have a mutual referral basis. I think that that's really important. I have been, time and time again, hypnotherapists have come to me and said, Sharon, how did you do it? You've managed to get into the medical field or the dental field. And I'm like, this has taken years, and I don't think I'm there yet. I really don't. I think I'm far from it, and yet I have worked very hard. It could be better, but it's, I've actually just been offered to link my training school to a school called the London International Medical School. So it's for international students who are in London, who are training to be medics. So I've just been talking to the professor who's beginning that. So, these things take years to cultivate those kind of relationships. I've known that particular man for 18 years or something, and he's seen me develop it. But I'd like it to be that it doesn't take everyone else years. I want people to be able to come on board. Saying that, as hypnotherapists, I think we need to be aware of our abilities and be very clear about what we can and can't do. I think we have to have a very high level of training to be alongside the medical and dental field. These people have been in training for years, and I'm sorry.
Yes, I know.
We cannot just walk in and just expect, just because we know one tool, that they're going to go, oh yes, well, of course I need you. I've just trained for nearly 20 years of my life, and I just got my degree, PhD etc., in this little tiny niche. You know, we've got to understand that these people have, and they've put thousands of dollars, pounds, you know, whatever into it,
and put their lives on hold, and then somebody
they
says,
put
I
their
took a
lives on
6-week
hold.
course.
And yet,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Denise,
I do think that one of the things, sorry, Martin, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, the amount of times you've said on this podcast, though, you wish you'd been taught hypnosis as part of your medical training.
Exactly.
As a doctor.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's why this school, this medical school, is interested in me coming alongside, because they're going to put this in. And I've just been again invited by an aesthetics, a dentist that I've known for years, who went into aesthetics, who's now got his own school, who wants me to team up with his school, because they want these things to come, they want them to be side by side. They should be side by side. It should be integrated.
I usually try to explain when we've talked about the fact that there's some areas where they do not wish you to be practicing hypnotherapy unless you are a physician or something similar. And my thing is, we as hypnotists need to take it down a peg in order to allow them to realize we're offering a technical ability in a modality. Yes, it's very nuanced. It isn't learn this 5-minute thing. It takes a lot longer than that, but mostly it's practice. The theory is pretty easy. But if we're comfortable being technicians, I think we would be a lot better accepted. 100%. And the idea that I'm coming in because I'm a hypnotist and I'm going to cure cancer is really not what we want to be. Exactly. You do have some amazing things. A 15-second induction for a tooth extraction is fabulous, but unusual.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I 100% agree with you on every level there, Denise, because when I go into any kind of surgery, I'm a technician.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to sit back. I have to watch sometimes some really dodgy work going on, especially in the dental world, because I've gone to various different dentists. I'm like going, you're doing what? You know, and that doesn't, and I'm like going, and I don't even know what's going on, but that's not right, you know. And I kind of sometimes I'm thinking, oh God, you know, that I haven't seen that before. But I have to sit back and just say, that's what my patient chose.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, respect to the people that are working around, because if they feel your respect, they'll also kind of give you the same respect back. Yeah, it takes some time. I mean, I've worked with one man, a lovely gentleman, Mr. Henshaw, and he was at the King Edward VII Hospital in, is it 7th, 8th? Gosh, in Harley Street area. And that's where the Queen goes for many of her issues. Oh, sorry, previous.
It's gonna take a while. It's like when they change the years, you have to write a different number. Just sounds wrong,
right? But that's where the royalty went. And so this gentleman, he said I needed to do a tooth. It was a kind of, I don't know what it was, some removals, but there was also bone graft. It was quite a huge operation, actually. No anesthetic, and he wanted his anaesthetist on board, and he didn't want it filmed. And afterwards he said, I totally regret that, and you didn't need the anaesthetist here, and I apologize. And he said, and your client's not mad, which I thought she was. And he said it was all
learning experience for everybody.
He said he was so pleased, and he said, you know, anything you want, Sharon, just let me know. And he was as sweet as anything. But it was a huge, he said it in 40 years, it's been the biggest learning curve he's ever had. And he said he never would have believed it.
Right. And yet, isn't that tragic? Because 50, 60 years ago, he could have been taught that in school.
Oh, yeah. And again, and I'm going to put this out there, which is something that we as hypnotherapists should understand, is that when you meet somebody in the medical or dental field, they may say that they've studied. And I've had that plenty of time. Oh, I've done hypnotherapy. And you say, well, what have you done? Oh, it was a disaster. Why was it a disaster? Because this person ended up having some kind of ab reaction or something or other.
Yeah.
And so they don't know what to do with it. And again, I also came up with this when I was you know, in my training school, I was always training the dentists, especially, or the medics, a really short program that they're not going to come to a lot. And my idea was they're not going to bother. They're not going to come into a long training. So you give them what they want. It's remiss of me. And I've stopped doing that. I've decided, no, you want to learn, come for the whole thing, learn.
Well, that's, you know, my course that still, because life keeps happening and I don't get it out there, but mine is only to teach them what it could do.
Right.
So that if they personally want to learn, fine, but you could probably do a shorter course than Martin and I had to do, because you won't need, it was pretty annoying to me to hear about Hippocratic Oath as a hypnotherapist. Kind of redundant and a few other things, but absolutely, you still need practice. It doesn't matter how many cardiac operations you've done, you haven't done it with hypnosis. So
exactly. And also what I would,
it's not 20 years worth of training either.
Right, exactly. And also what I understood with all of the medics and dentists that I've trained is when they started using hypnosis, of course, they would get deeper than they realized that they were going to get. And if they didn't have knowledge of how to come through that part of things, then that's also a problem.
Scary.
Yeah, it's very scary, because suddenly you're faced with, you know, as we all know, you open the subconscious mind and boom, it's
There'll be all sorts of stuff in there. Yeah.
Problematic in many things, especially in the hypnotherapy world. I have to say there are problems in our world, which are.
But is that going to get in the way with us of the modality being accepted in the medical world?
So I'm not sure it is. I think because now there is much more in the way of neuroscience and studies that have come through, in terms of, you know, universities are doing much more work to see how this works, and you've got much more equipment to gauge brain nuances and problems, and, you know, the neurology behind it all. So I think that the medical establishment is taking note from a research perspective. The problem that I see with research in this area is that, again, you do research with anyone in hypnosis and it's so individual.
Well, that's
and
it.
You're
Yeah.
only going to get a fraction of some kind of awareness of what's really going on. But again, you have to do research. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think the medical establishment is more open to listening now, because there is factual research being done.
Have you heard of the CORP, the Clinical Outcomes Research Programme over here in the UK on hypnotherapy?
No, I haven't.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's something I'm a member of. And
I need you to send me an email about it.
I will. I'll include it in the show notes, actually. Our clients fill in, after they're given their consent, they fill in a questionnaire after each session, and they grade themselves on 7 different categories. And then it keeps a running total over weeks, and it you know, it provides, it's like, for example, when I refer my client back to her psychiatrist, or I'm sending notes over, there's the evidence.
I'd be really interested in that, Martin.
This medical speak, all this doctor speak. Just before we do have to wrap it up, Sharon, let's just lighten the mood a little bit. Tell us about some of the fun stuff you've done.
Oh, fun stuff. I think unusual stuff.
Yeah.
Did you know about my dog hypnosis?
No, do tell. That's going to be an unusual one.
Okay, well, I apparently it seems like I'm the first person in history to use hypnosis for veterinary surgery for a hernia operation, no anesthetic, on a dog.
Wow.
And then recently, I have got it on film. And then recently, I did a dog phobia, a phobia that a dog had of the dentist.
That sounds fascinating. How would you tell it to picture?
Just I introduced the toothbrush to it in a different way. So I put the dog into a trance state and then was able to brush their teeth, which they'd never been able to have their lip held up before. And that normally sent them into an absolute spin. And you can see that video. I've videoed it as well.
Well,
Well, send it. We'll include that in the notes too. So
that doesn't sound quite as crazy as it may initially sound, because if you think about it, horse whisperers, what do?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
They calm horses down and they get them prepared for a race, and it's a real thing even in this day and age, and going around the tracks, isn't it? They have horse whisperers.
They do.
They do. To calm them down.
I have to say though, people have often asked me, how do you do it? Teach us. I want to learn. I personally feel, again, with anything in the medical, dental, and now veterinary world, we need more research. And I'm very fortunate where my husband works, there is a veterinary college, and we're trying to get them involved to see if we can do the actual research, because I don't think this is necessarily a wise thing to be doing on every animal myself. I think, again, without it, without the research being done, I don't really want to go, oh, this is how you do it, and this is what needs to be done, etc. It's one of those
what
things.
we know about hypnosis, though, it's easy to see the theory side of it, how a dog would pick up on the right tones, on the right rhythm of voice, etc., because they do pick up on they can feel our fear, can't they? They can pick up on that.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing was when I made the film of this, the amount of physicians that phoned me afterwards said, gosh, if you can do that on a dog, imagine what you could do on a person. And I was like, oh my God, how many conversations have I had with you? I mean, what did it take?
A dog, man's best friend. Okay.
Right? So it's interesting that people don't look up from the bigger picture until they're thrown this kind of what's going on here.
I have another question though. You're doing this, you're doing this, and you're doing this. Do you ever have any non-hypnosis related time? Is that where you're off in Europe right now? Are you zipping around?
Since I've been here. I love it. I don't,
if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life. Yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, I'm sitting in the airplane the other day, and I just, what do you do? I do this. What do you? I sit next to a doctor and a dentist next to me on the plane. So of course, what do I do? Here's my YouTube channel. Have a watch. And I was sitting in I think it was Stansted Airport 2 or 3 months ago, and I just asked somebody to use the phone charger. She was next to it, and we set up a conversation. She's now going to be one of my students. I went to Covent Garden Market, and I was looking at all these pretty brooches, and I don't know how the conversation happened with the lady who was sitting there, but she's fearful of a procedure and medical procedure, and I ended up doing a hypnosis with her. She gives me a brooch for free, and I'm going to learn from her how her procedure went. It's if you're able to give in a way that's going to help somebody, why would you turn it off?
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it is a very helpful and caring profession, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sharon, it's been an absolute thrill. I don't know where the time's gone. I'm absolutely delighted that you've joined us on the show.
Thanks
today.
so much, both of you, Martin and Denise. It's such a pleasure to speak to you both. And with Denise, I've known her not very long myself, but we're so on board with the same concepts and ideas. It's just wonderful to meet like-minded people and be in the profession. When I studied this, one thing that I was told is there is no competition from anybody. You're doing your own thing in your own way, but we do need to collaborate.
Collaboration.
Absolutely, yeah. It is a very personal thing. Clients make their own decisions on who they think they will, get the best treatment from. I can't think of anything that is more personal than hypnotherapy, actually, in that respect.
Gynecologist.
That's my thought too, but it is, you've got to be on the same wavelength with other therapists to work with them and with your patients. They have to.
Absolutely, you've got to get into their space.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It was really nice. Thank you. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed listening. Please remember, this podcast is designed to give you an insight into therapeutic hypnosis and is for educational purposes only. So remember, consult with your own healthcare professional if you think something you've heard may apply to you or a loved one.
If you found this episode useful, you can apply for free continuing professional development or CME credits using the link provided in the show notes. Feel free to contact either of us through the links in the show notes. Join us again next week.